Good afternoon. This is the third edition of the Right Advice podcast, presented by myself, Arthur Catalai, senior partner at A2K Advisory. Today we're having the president of the Chamber of Commerce, American Chamber of Commerce and DRC, Mr. Lino N'shimba. Thank you, Mr. Lino N'shimba, for having us.
Thank you for having me. Good day.
Well, you have a very interesting background between Congo, the United States, and Congo again, and now you are in between the two because you are representing American commerce and Congo commerce within the chamber. How did it all started with you in Congo and with you going to the States? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
All right, I think that it all started when I was a young man. I grew up in Bordeaux. I came back to, back then it was Zaire. Mm-hmm. So I came back to Zaire, spent 12 years in the elite school of Collège Mobutu. Okay. Then I went to, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my background.
Of course.
So then I went to Egypt. I had a scholarship to Egypt, and I went to study there. But then again, I became the first, I would say the first black tour leader guide in Egypt. So I spent a couple years doing that with European tourists. I worked for a tourist company. I went in and out in Monaco, and afterwards I went to the United States.
Okay.
To further my education, where I got a degree in political science, pre-law. Okay. And in California, that was in California. Okay. And I furthered my studies in business administration with a master's degree. Mm-hmm. And I'm currently preparing my PhD in philosophy. So that's a little bit in terms of my background, educational, academic background. And after that, of course, I went into the world of working, mm-hmm. and I did many different things.
In business particularly?
Related to business always, until I became, with my last job, as a banker. Okay. I was an investment banker. I worked for Wells Fargo Advisors, mm-hmm. which was at the time the biggest bank and advisory firm in the United States. So it is only after a few years that I decided to return to the homeland, or the land of my ancestors, which is Africa, and particularly the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
And why is that? Because I mean, you had a great career, a great life over there. I mean, California is tremendous, beautiful. So why the need to be able to
Absolutely. I think that at some point you have to realize your own value within the system. Okay. So me being myself, I was one out of many in the United States, mm-hmm. with what I was doing as a banker. I was just one banker out of thousands and thousands of bankers. Mm-hmm. So I decided that it was important to do something that brings value to our people, I will say. And being in the world of banking and investment, I saw firsthand how businesses actually make a country, because governments don't make countries. Small enterprises and entrepreneurs and big companies make a country. They build a country because they are the job creators.
That's right.
Okay, a government at some point is saturated because they can't get more than what the government can afford. Mm-hmm. But businesses continually create jobs. So I saw it firsthand, and I told myself, why not help out in a place where I'm not going to be necessarily one out of the many, but one out of a few.
No, certainly. And there's certainly a big need for that here.
There you go. So that's what led me to put my eyes on the continent, and particularly on the DRC.
Okay. And you came back and you created Africa Equity Investment. You got your own company?
Yes, I created Africa Equity and Investment Group, which is more like a holding company with a strategic consultancy. Okay. So that's what we do, and Africa Equity and Investment Group has many different companies within it.
Okay.
So amongst them, Africa Equity Mining, for example. Amongst them, Congo Recycling, for example. So we do have a few other companies that are a part of the group that we created.
Okay. And in regards to mining, what are you interested in? We all know that copper, cobalt, lithium are the minerals in demand and en vogue currently. How do you see the demand going in regards to not only China but obviously the United States?
The demand of a mineral will always be there and will always be increasing, to my point of view. Now, doing business is also about having a vision to fulfill or to fill a need.
Okay.
That could be a present need or a future need. Okay, so that is why we entered the mining world, because we realized early on that the energy in the world is shifting. Okay, we realize that it's shifting, and we understand that, for example, by 2030 there will be more electrical cars than ever before, and most of the car manufacturers are shifting into electric cars. Hence the need of batteries for those electric cars. So we got into mining because we understand that the demand is there and the demand will continue to increase. So strategically, we made acquisitions of some mining squares in the DRC, in different parts of the south, I would say, and in Katanga, and particularly in Lualaba, and in the Tanganyika province.
And in regards to the mining sector in the DRC, there's been some strong Chinese investments over the last 10, 15 years. Obviously, North American countries, particularly the United States, wants to come back in the game. Freeport-McMoRan was there a couple of years ago, but they sold the stakes to China Moly. And now, a couple of months ago, President Biden asked for some wartime powers used during the Cold War for mineral needed to clean energy push. And under the Defense Production Act, the objective is to secure U.S. sources of critical minerals that are deemed key components of clean energy technology. So in a nutshell, that says that American investments into the global mining sector, particularly the Congolese mining sector, are welcomed and are obviously needed. How do you see this going forward? Does Congo needs to create an environment in which American investments are going to be able to thrive, or do American investments need to come back and deal with whatever situation that they find in, as we've seen big companies like Glencore or Chinese are still able to operate here despite the difficult environment that we all know of?
Yes, I think that talking about the environment of businesses, it's important to understand that America will always operate the American way. That means that we cannot necessarily plunge into an environment where there is lots of corruption, there's no good governance. Those are components that we have seen evolving in the right direction. Okay, the last few years have shown us that the government has tackled those issues seriously, and the coming of American companies will be always based on doing the right thing, doing business correctly, into an environment where you have good governance and less corruption or no corruption at all. So that being said, it seems like we don't have the same standards as others, okay? So Chinese can come in masses, Indian can come in masses, but we carefully want to thread in the waters of a good, clean environment for businesses to thrive, and the people, the national people, to thrive. So I believe that we have huge interest right now. The interest is big, and the reality is following. Like, for example, in July, we're going to have a serious economic mission into United States dealing with agricultural, energy, and the mining sector as well. So having the opportunities is one thing, but engaging the conversation with the real players in the field of mining is a different element on its own. So it is important that we engage those conversations. But now, that being said, I think and I do believe that Congolese involvement is actually the most important thing in terms of mining. It will be good to see some Congolese getting together and creating good companies that can exploit their own resources.
For sure.
And that's perhaps a far-fetched dream, but I believe that we have the resources, we have the people here, and we do have lots of money floating around here.
For sure.
So we need to look at it that way. We cannot only wait for foreigners to come and invest in the DRC, or waiting for the Americans to come and do things. It has to be a joint effort with everybody.
And we've seen this economic model in other African countries.
Absolutely.
Nigeria, Ghana.
Absolutely.
Where there are a lot of national from those countries, big operators within oil and gas or in the mining sector. So it's certainly something to replicate here.
I think that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to look at what other people have done in their country to create some sort of autonomy, to create some sort of national wealth, instead of turning constantly to the foreigners to bring their own investments here.
Sure. And going back to your business background, you told me earlier about the relationship that you had with one of the FedEx founder, Mr. Charles Brendan, who influenced you in regards to business and how to conduct business. He was a friend of Fred Smith.
Fred Smith, yes,
I believe.
Absolutely.
How did it go? How did it inspire you to get where you are and accomplish what you've done?
Charles Brendan was basically a mentor to me, because in the world of business, you need a few elements to be successful. You need to have a vision, you need to have a passion in what you do, and you also need some sort of mentoring, especially if you're getting into a field that is unknown to you. So Charles Brendan was not only a friend, but he was more like a mentor to me. He was there at the earliest days of the creation of the multinational company FedEx, which is a multi-billion-dollar company today.
Very well done.
And I've learned a few things from him that led me to become who I am today. And the most important thing that I learned from Charles Brendan is that he always told me, Lino, there's a way to get results guaranteed in what you do.
How so?
By doing nothing. So if you want to get result guarantee, you do nothing and you'll get zero. So now when you put it on the reverse, you understand that you have to do things, you have to take risks in order to get something happening. And this is exactly what I did when I decided to come to Africa. I looked into the market, I looked at what was needed at the time, because I traveled a lot in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And I like good food, and I love good wine. Obviously, I grew up in Bordeaux. I got an early love for the wine, but I realized that many places I would go, I would eat well, but I will not drink good wine. Mm-hmm. So especially in Africa, I visited many countries, and I decided that it was an opportunity to not only bring good wine from all over the world to mm-hmm. Africans, but to also initiate a culture of wine.
Talking of which, in addition to being the chief executive of Africa Equity Investments and the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in DRC, you're also the CEO of your own wine company, which name is
Vino Veritas,
Cellars.
Yes.
California fine wine.
Yes.
So you got into that after living in Bordeaux, and initially got your first entry into the wine.
No, I mean, I lived in Bordeaux. I grew up, my early childhood was in Bordeaux.
Okay.
And there was always wine at the table.
Of course.
So I think it triggered me to have more of an interest, accrued interest into wine, but it's not given to everybody at the same degree. Mm-hmm. We are 9 kids in the family, but only 3 of us are into wine, and you can't say it's the majority of the children. So that love came early on, but I think that when you do something, you have to have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. You don't just do or create a business because your neighbor did that.
Of course. You
have to love what you do. You have to have a passion for it, and you should prevent yourself from considering it as your child. Because if you look at big companies in the world today, there are rare companies where you have one owner with 100% ownership. So most of the time you will have someone with 10-15% equity or shareholding, mm-hmm. because they don't consider it as their baby. Mm-hmm. They consider it as a common baby, a baby that's raised, like we say in Africa, a child is raised by a whole village. It's the same concept in the business, because you need new people to come in, you need new ideas, you need challenging ideas, mm-hmm. and you do need, at some point, many company needs additional capital to grow. And if you don't have it, you have to do an exchange in terms of equity, shareholding, and you bring it while you remain yourself in it, or you sell out. So for me, wine is simply a passion. Today, I'm less involved into the wine company because my wife took over that portion of the business. She's passionate about wine, which is an element that's needed into running a good business. So, but as we say, the company exists and it's thriving.
In California.
In California, it's based in California, in San Francisco area, and we export California fine wines to the world, and especially particularly in Africa and the Congo. And today we are not limited into California wines. Mm-hmm. We deal with the finest wines of the world. Okay, we deal with the finest champagne, the finest bubbles in the world.
And in California, wine production has a rich viticulture history, as well as the one in France, in Bordeaux. There's also one very good in South Africa. What are the possibilities to create a wine industry in the DRC with production based out of here?
I would say good wine comes from everywhere wine can be produced. Okay. In 1976, for example, in the Jugement de Paris, California wines won over French wines, and in that competition you had actually 2 of the 5 classified wines of France as some of the best, like Chateaubriand and was in the competition. But talking about production of wine here, we engaged some studies recently in the eastern part of the country. So we realized that on the slopes of the mountain, the lower part, in those volcanic area, we can grow some Chardonnay and some Pinot Noir. So it's an experiment that already started. So, but as you know, for red wine, you need to wait 5 years in order to produce wine. All we need to control as a challenge is the excess water rain. So vines don't like excessive water. So the reason why we will go on the slopes is because we don't want the water to drain into the ground, but slide off. Okay. That's the only challenge. Beside that, all the elements are there. The sun gives us good sun rays. You have good climate for wine in the eastern part of the Congo.
So now
it will take years to get there, and it will take good investment, huge investment, long-term investment to get there.
So it's 5 to 10 years to be able to.
5 to 10 years. I will say that to see a good bottle of red wine, we will be looking into 2028.
And what are the bracket of investments, just to have a general idea for the public to be able to start production?
I mean, if you want to do a wine to be able to give the whole country wine, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars. But this is something that will start off as a small production, limited production, accessible to a few, and then with the course of time, it's gonna evolve into a bigger production. The lands are available, the expertise is there. I have my old good friends in Napa Valley and even in the Champagne region. We have good partners that are willing to come and work with us in this project. But the cost, it is costly.
Especially initially.
Absolutely. And it's a long-term investment. So if you think of investing today and harvesting tomorrow, it's not the right business for you. So you need to put your money and effort and love, time and passion in order to get something good.
Well, certainly. Well, thank you for giving us this outlook. We're now going to take a little break. So we are going to have a little jingle publicity for our sponsors for today, which is World Bank, the biggest bank in the DRC, which is celebrating 20 years this year of existence. So
May 2nd, 2002 to May 2nd, 2022, 20 years together. It has been 20 years that World Bank has supported the development of the Congolese economy. 20 years that World Bank has been working alongside the Congolese people to realize their project, meet their challenges, and realize their dreams. 20 years that we offer the best banking experience in terms of accessibility and innovation. 20 years that together we are building a great and strong Congo. World Bank's objective is to give its corporate, SME, and individual clients access to the most modern techniques, services, and products in the banking and financial sectors, which explains the relevance of its slogan.
Your bank is my bank.
So going back to your main activity, which is the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in DRC. The American Chamber of Commerce is the biggest business federation in the world, I believe. American business are all over the world, in America, but also internationally, as we know. From food restaurants to tech to McDonald's, and I'm not going to name them all. What are your activities? What is your vision in the DRC in regards to private sector here and private sector over there? The liaison between the two, the relationship, historical relationships between the two, and what can be foresee for the future of those two relationships.
I would say that we are proud to be a part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is, like you say, the biggest federation of enterprise in the world. We count over 3 million companies as members of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce throughout the world. And we are the national representation here in DRC, which is called the MCHAM DR Congo. Now, as such, we have the duty to get our members, American companies and Congolese companies, because it's not only about American companies. American companies form the majority of members, but we do have also Congolese companies as members. We want to make sure that they stay compliant with the national laws and regulations in order to do business in the correct way. And we are more an advocate of our members as well, the existing ones, and we help them grow as well. Now, we are the link, the non-political link between the companies of the US that wants to come to DRC for opportunities of investment, and we help them settle in the right way, like I say, following the compliance of the law here. And we are there to make sure that they are treated correctly, and understanding that in any level playing field, American companies always perform best. So we are fighting, for example, right now with not against, but we are fighting for good normalization in the taxation and fiscality. For example, in the DRC, because it seems like there's a multiplicity of taxes. We want it to be streamlined. We are currently working with the Prime Minister's office to make sure that we get a streamlining of the taxes, and we not only working theoretically, but we also have the resources to help the country get there. Because as you know, if we get to a numerization, digitalization of the whole taxation system, it will definitely lead to good governance.
For sure.
And less corruption. So this is actually one of the priorities, if not the priority of the US Chamber of Commerce in DRC at this moment.
And a lot more transparency.
Absolutely.
Within all sectors.
Absolutely. And I would say, besides being the president of the chamber and the chairman of the board, I am also an administrator. I'm on the board of FEC, the Federation of Enterprises of Congo.
Okay. This is the biggest business lobby group.
Absolutely. So we work jointly with the FEC to push forward the agenda of the streamlining of taxation in DRC.
Okay. And the possibility of the DRC private sector and the US private sector being more in liaison beyond mining, because we talk about mining a lot obviously, and it's understandable because it's 80% of the economic resource of this country. But what are the possibilities beyond the mining sector? Because Congo is not always about mining.
Yeah.
It's not only about mining, it's about also
Absolutely.
other opportunities within it.
I think the first rule of investment is diversification. If you stay focused in only one thing, you put all your eggs in one basket, if something happens, you lose all your eggs. It's a simple thing to understand. So if you do not diversify, you obviously will run against a wall at some point. That is why I believe that the Congo should not put all its focus into mining. But I think that the president, Tshisekedi, has stated it very clearly. We want more agriculture, we want more energy, and we want mining as well. But we need to have a process of diversification. We have here in the DRC amongst the most fertile lands in the world. This is a country where you can eat a mango, okay, and you drop the core of the mango, le noyau, you dropped it on the ground and it grows by itself. Okay, you can understand that we have agricultural opportunities that go beyond imagination.
But compared to countries like South Africa, it's not in the culture here. In an industrial way, so to speak, maybe in an artisanal way, but in an industrial fashion, it's not something that's ingrained in Congolese
yes,
minds.
I do agree with you to a certain extent, but I think that the love of the land, the love of the country, is something very important to have, because not everybody should work in an office. In America, for example, back in the days, a long time ago, what they did, they used to give land. They will say, if you go Midwest, we give you 10 acres of land, but you have to grow, you have to do agriculture. The country, in this case, the Congo, the population is concentrated along the rivers, okay?
That's right.
Along and close to the rivers. You can spread it, 15 kilometers on each side. But when you take a plane to go, for example, from Kinshasa to Lubumbashi, you could see the vast land that's empty. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the ratio of population compared to the land is about, if I'm not mistaken, it's less than 15% land occupied by the whole population. Mm-hmm. So what do we do with the rest of the land?
Everybody wants to live, at the same place or around the same place.
The love of the country is something that is key to the development of a country. When you love your country, you start thinking of long-term investment. You don't think of an investment that is a short-term investment where you have your gain tomorrow or the day after. Mm-hmm. We need to invest in agriculture. And we have the means right here. We have the means. The Congo has the means to do that. We don't need Indian people to come and show us how to do agriculture. If we don't get to that point, I don't think we will ever take off, as the country will never take off economically, because the effort can be put into mining at some point. Mining will not give the same resources that it gives right now. You can look at the example of the Arab countries producing oil. Mm-hmm. What did they do? What are they doing right now?
Diversification.
They're diversifying into renewable energy and etc. Because the wall is nearing.
Or investing in football clubs in Europe.
Diversification. You can do whatever you want to do, but don't do just one thing, because that one thing will come to an end at some point.
That's for sure.
You know, and agriculture is something where people will always need food. People will always need food. I mean, our neighboring countries will always need food. The Congolese will always need food. So it's not something that will go away.
But it's a culture in countries such as Kenya or South Africa or even Tanzania. It's a culture that is there in the people's mind and everyday activities. It's not here. How do you channel?
Loving the country means also educating people from an early age to understand the value of agriculture, to understand the value of renewable energy, to understand the value of mining, all those components. But these are things that we need to start early on. Okay? And investing into people understanding the value of agriculture. I mean, it's something that will always be with us. I would prefer not to drive my car, but not go without food. It's a necessity, it's a daily necessity. And imagine that if you have an agricultural product that you sell for 50 cents to 1 million people every day. Imagine the kind of wealth that you create. From that, the number of jobs that you're going to create. And I do believe that we learn from people or countries that already done it, see how they did it, because we do not need to reinvent the wheel. But at the same time, we generate the funding from here. I don't think there is a single agricultural bank here in the DRC. Is there?
No, it's not.
I'm not aware of that. Why not? I mean, we need to start focusing in the things that can take the country and move it forward, but with the love of the country.
And we talked about the business environment early on. You were one of the directors of the board at the Fédération des Entreprises du Congo, and you also obviously at the American Chamber of Commerce. People complain a lot about the business environment. Whose responsibility is that? Is that FEC? Is that the government? Is that a little bit of the two? How do you make an environment which is better for the economic operators that are actually operating, here and now on the ground, over potential investors who want to come to Congo, but they are not very, confident, aside from the corruption or the alleged corruption that is going on, into an environment or where the capital is going to be secure?
I think sitting on the table and starting a conversation is key. Because recently we had members of our chamber, we had members that saw new taxes, imposed upon them without even any sort of consultation. For example, in the telecommunication, I would say Africell, for example, is a member of the chamber. Africell is seeing the taxes increase from 37%, I believe, up to 53%.
That's incredible.
That is incredible. It's a provincial tax. It's not a national tax. So before you get into taxing people or taxing companies, you need to have some sort of conversation, because then you will understand how you do it in conjunction with them telling you the impact that's gonna fall on them and on the people who are the clients. We want digitalization of the country, which will lead to good governance. But now, if you increase the taxes on telecoms, the price of the tax, the price tag of those taxes will be transferred to who? To the client.
Mm-hmm.
Then you will have less people involved in the digitalization. Then we will not move forward, but we're going to go backward. FEC and us, what we prone and what we would like to see is the enlargement of what we call here in French l'assiette fiscale.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make it bigger so we get more people involved. We don't need to tax more the same people who are already compliant.
And scare them away.
Because what will happen is that you're going to scare them away and they're going to go in unofficial channels. Simply. So we need to make the plate of taxation and fiscality much bigger, much larger, but with fair taxes.
And it's already the case with many companies who prefer to operate in an informal way, because they sense that the taxation of Congolese authorities are not fair, whether it's true or not.
Well, fair or not, the government has the right to do what it believes is correct in order to raise taxes, in order to get more money into the treasury. But what we want is not penalizing the people who are already paying and ultimately penalizing the clients at large. Take ZAF, which is a real estate company. So the taxes go from, I would say, with an increase of 1,000% from 2012 to now.
This is unheard of anywhere in the world.
This we're talking about provincial taxes. So we are working with the government, having conversations in order to come to some compromise.
And how do they justify such a spike in the taxation?
But unfortunately, I'm not a politician. I'm not the one who sets the tax brackets or the tax hikes. But what I know in terms of business, the more you tax people, the lesser you're going to have new business coming in, and the lesser you're going to have people paying taxes, because obviously they're going to be asphyxiated at some point. Mm-hmm. They're not going to have the money that you want them to pay you.
Most definitely.
So it's a conversation to have with concrete actions to follow. Mm-hmm. Okay, as I say, we're currently working with the Prime Minister's office regarding those issues. So we hope to get to some good compromise.
The show is called The Right Advice. Would you have any? I know there are plenty of advices you could give with your vast experience in business and everything related to it. But if you'd have one advice for an entrepreneur or one advice for an investor and one advice for a Congolese national, what would it be? In an environment that is difficult, not easy to swim within, so to speak.
I would say sometimes I wonder how and why Indian businesses are thriving, how and why Lebanese businesses are thriving, how and why Chinese businesses are thriving.
Most definitely.
It's called networking. It's called networking. These people get together. I'll give you a simple example. I was getting involved into a company called Citigroup, okay, into buying some shares into that company. And the owner, who's also a friend of mine, told me that at the beginning he could not find funding for his great idea, because this gentleman brought cinema back in the Congo. Okay, but he couldn't find a single investor, Congolese investor, to invest into his venture. But he did find Indian investors, okay, that gave him some money. So I told him, well, we're gonna buy them out and we're gonna move on. So we called the Indian, and they said, no problem. We gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. He said, okay, I'm okay with it. So we said, okay, we're gonna draw the papers and we're gonna sign your exit, your good exit. And he said, no, I have to ask my partners. I said, well, pick up the phone, call them, right here, right now. He said, no, there's 35 of them. 35 people put $2,000 each to get $70,000 that was needed. It's called working together. Okay? Congolese entrepreneurs need to learn to work together. Money is not an issue. There's a lot of money circulating here. You can only and simply look at the number of luxury cars that you have in the streets that are bought in cash. Okay, you can simply look at that.
That's right.
But people need to set the priorities straight and start forming some networking habits that will lead them to work together, put their money together. We don't even have a single Congolese bank. Do you believe that the money is missing here?
Of course.
Congolese cannot put 100 or 200 Congolese cannot put money together to fund the bank.
So what's preventing them from
the lack of working together, because most people believe that they can succeed individually, while the success is a collective process. You know, we can be 10 people wanting to do a venture, an enterprise that requires $1 million. I don't have $1 million, but I have 200,000, for example. You don't have $1 million, but you have 400,000. He doesn't have $1 million, but he has 150,000. When you put 10 people together, the million becomes an easy thing to get, because each one just put $100,000. You understand? But individually, we will never be able to get that jump started, because we simply don't have individually the means. So why don't we think of doing collectively things to move the needle a little bit? So I would say for Congolese entrepreneurs, because there are so many of them, there's so many talented ones, I would say let's learn to work together here.
That's great advice. And I believe that's a fitting advice to conclude this show.
All right.
Thank you very much for...
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, and I hope it's not the last time to be on your show.
Of course, it's not.
All right.
Thank you very much, and have a good day, and all the best with American Chamber of Commerce here and the business that you have in the tech. Okay?
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.